This is a White House marinated in oil. These are two president and vice president who came out of the oil industry. And they brought a lot of the oil industry with them into the high reaches of government. And as Ted Koppel has pointed out on more than one occasion, oil was a major reason for going into Iraq. The huge reserves of oil that the oil companies could never find anew on their own or pay the amount of money it took was theirs for the asking. Either the second or third largest reserves of oil in the world after the Soviet Union and Saudi Arabia. Congress should use its authority to officially determine what President Bush knew before going to war in Iraq. Your files, I said to Chairman Conyers, and retrieval systems are bulgy with overwhelming evidence behind all these 5 impeachable categories. When constitutional duty combines with the available evidence, inaction by Congress amounts to a suppression of that evidence from constitutional implementation. When the Democrats were heading for a net election gain in 2006 in the House of Representatives, many observers of presidential accountability entertained the hope that the Judiciary Committee of the House, with its new chairman, John Conyers, would hold hearings on an impeachment resolution. No way. Okay, let's go to stage 2, fallback position. The next backup was the belief that there would be an impeachment inquiry. No way. Let's go to stage 3, fallback. The next lowered expectation backup was just a hearing on impeachment. Just have a hearing on impeachment, Mr. Chairman. Urged by several of your former and present congressional colleagues, Senator McGovern, Senator Alvarez, Congressman Finley, Congressman Andy Jacobs, people who worked with Chairman Conyers, beseeching him, at least have a hearing. At least have a record of what this White House has done to our country, to this Constitution. No way. The fourth fallback was simply a hearing on the criminal and constitutional violations of Bush-Cheney by your committee. No way. So far. All right, let's go to the fifth fallback. I mean, how low do you want to put your expectation about this? The fifth fallback is Senator Russ Feingold's resolution to censure President George W. Bush for violating repeatedly and defiantly the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, which was used illegally to spy on Americans without judicial warrant. Do you know how strongly our founding citizens felt about government spying without a judicial warrant? It was a big concern of theirs. We've lost some of that concern as long as it deals with people having funny sounding last names who are Americans and not foreigners. Senator Feingold has this resolution, and then he had a detailed explanation of why it was important at least to censure the president. And he showed how George W. Bush not only violated, not only spied, but he didn't level with the congressional committees that he was supposed to be informing, and he deceived the American people because he said again and again that we do not wiretap without judicial approval publicly. Lying through his teeth. Imagine having to say this about the President of the United States. Lying through his teeth. The record is invincible on that point. He also said that his regime does not engage in extraordinary rendition, which is a fancy phrase for kidnapping people in the United States who happen to be going through airports, not really knowing who their identity is at times, like that Canadian engineer, sending him to a Middle East country where they were tortured. There's an arrangement there. And he denied it to the New York Times. And it's absolutely false. Is there any penalty that this president pays? Any punishment this president pays for such abhorrent behavior? 5 major categories of impeachment. Well, you know what happened to Senator Feingold's resolution in a democratically controlled Senate? It wasn't even subject to a hearing. They just pushed it aside. He's a member of the Judiciary Committee and is the only senator who voted against the Patriot Act. There's another option. Here's the final option, that they do nothing, that the Congress does nothing. Volumes can and will be written about what can go down as the most serious abdication of impeachment responsibilities by a Congress in its history. No other president has committed more systemic, repeated, impeachable offenses with such serious consequences to this country, its people, to Iraq, its people, and the security of the nation before than George W. Bush. The final chapter on his abuses of power will be written after he leaves office. And they're not likely to be pleasant in terms of the boomeranging possibility or potential of what he did in Iraq. These abuses are monarchical. They're exactly the kind of abuses that the American Revolution was designed to end from Britain. Declarations by Bush on the somber occasion of the 5th anniversary of the invasion of Iraq this past March 20, 2008, demonstrated his criminal, unconstitutional arrogance and his confidence that this Democratic Congress will continue to be cowed, continue its historic cowardliness, and continue to leave the American people without representation. Even should he unilaterally attack Iran, the Democratic Party has abandoned its critical role as an opposition party in this and other serious matters. Here's a president who let our soldiers in Iraq, month after month, year after year, be exposed without adequate body armor, without adequate vehicle armor, at least 900 fatalities attributed to the lack of that armor, and the Democrats wouldn't even make it an issue in the campaign. Here's a president who deliberately lowballs U.S. casualties in Iraq because he defines U.S. casualties as only those that are incurred in active combat. And so U.S. casualties are almost triple what the official figure of some 30,000. And the Democrats in 2004 refused to make it a political issue. And I would say to John Kerry's people, and to him directly, make this an issue. This is before he was swift voted. Here's a draft dodger Bush and a draft dodger Cheney, who were gung-ho for the Vietnam War as long as someone did the fighting for them, their age. And they put John Kerry on the defensive, who was a Vietnam veteran. There's something deficient in the DNA character of the Democratic Party. In a January 6, 2008 op-ed in the Washington Post, former Senator George McGovern wrote an eloquently reasoned plea for the impeachment of George W. Bush. He didn't do it with any delight. Who has any delight in that? But when the honorific office of the presidency is so demeaned and violated, you have to separate the occupant from the office.